What is up, guys? So, a buddy of mine brought something up about having a knack for um, finalizing fabrication or making things fit that are a little bit more complex or difficult to work on. So, it kind of brought me back to the point of when we're working on my car. I want to make everything very serviceable to where I don't have to take off three things to get to one thing, and the efforts put in on the design cascade so well into the rest of the build. So I hate saying this, but every hour you're pouring into design is probably saving you a ton of time in the long run when it comes to the overall usability of the vehicle. Right, so you're trying to put 20 gallons of shit in a 5 gallon bucket like my car. Um, if you take the time and you do those sorts of planning things with either your fabricator or cardboard aided design, CAD, or there's a bunch of different ways of slowing down and making sure the process of this fits with this, with this, with this, as well as future proofing that um, by leaving room in certain areas for heat management, um, wiring, plumbing, whatever you're trying to do, always try to think about that sort of stuff. Isolation for vibration is a huge one too. So, when I went to design the original stuff with Tony, FFR Fabrication, who did the original design with me, I pretty much said, okay, I'll measure out the optimal size cores that I can get for radiator, intercooler, uh, oil coolers, stuff like that. And to be fair, I made a mistake ordering the first Griffin radiator. I made it the true width of the car. And although it would fit, it's like you're shoehorning in that part of the intercooler instead of having like some room on either side. So we knew immediately that wasn't going to work. I downsized it, and I also got the height instead of a 19-inch with a very, very, very steep angle. I went 15 and a half inch to kick it out this way, right? So I'm losing a little bit of height, but I'm gaining either ground clearance or I'm gaining angle, right? Because if your radiator's flat, you're not going to gain any airflow over it because it's air comes in, and what ends up happening is it won't want to go down. You're going to have a little bit of rake to it for it to work. So, anyways, my point with this is Tony and I spend a ton of time to design and make it all function very well for serviceability. And I made a whole post the other day about I get really sick and tired of seeing uh, things slapped together, things shoddy. And I think that as a community, we're better than that. That's why this, right? Like, these people work incredibly hard on their cars and other people's cars that they support to make sure that it's done to a quality standard um, that is uplifting the overall average of the community. And I think that that's an important aspect of design. So when you go through and, in our case, we're talking about damn seat height. 1 second. There we go. In our case, for my car, I have everything is a few bolts or a few brackets or something away from being perfectly taken out or replaced. Um, like a petcock, a quarter turn valve on the bottom of a catch can, right? So like there's a hole drilled in mine, the catch can sits lower, and then it goes down to a hose. The hose has a quarter turn valve inside of the front fender to where draining it isn't removing the catch can. That to me is very stupid. But it's still low profile enough to where it fits and the big, vibrant Dash 10 fittings don't hit the hood. So every little bit of design and understanding what needs to stay. This is a hot region. This needs to stay hot. This is a cold region. This needs to stay cold. Wiring has to go here. It's plastic for like ABS, so that has to be protected, if not designed around. Stuff that is critical has to be planned out in advance. So take your time in the fabrication, take your time in the design, use tools like cardboard and angle finders, and God, if you don't have a tape measure, you're pretty fucked. But I think that as a community, we can grow and build these cars better. Um, this stuff that I did with Tony, he was able to make my vision come true. It was fantastic, and now working with Phil, it's more of that, even at the next level. So I think that the communication is a huge thing. Um, I can lay up certain things and say this pipe needs to go here to this angle to this, and then I need to make a box or a oval fitting or something to get through this very narrow region, and then come back out of it normal, right? And we're able to do that, but uh, it's not an easy task for someone who doesn't have an artistic vision. So, right brain design, if you didn't understand what that was at the very beginning, is right side of your brain is artistic, all the goofiness and out of frame thinking is going to be like your right brain. Your left is your logic, your analytics, stuff like that. And anyone who knows me, I'm also very, very heavy into that sort of thing. However, it always came down to approaching things in artistic value and designing things in artistic value, and then translating that and formulating that with the logic, because you can't have one without the other. You know, go walk around with half a brain, you'll know what I'm talking about. There's plenty of those people around. So overall, take the time to fabricate and design for functionality. And if something doesn't fit initially, think about moving engine or moving subframe or moving steering rack or whatever is getting in your way. You can take a lot of different approaches instead of hammer time, which everyone loves hammer time, but the paint doesn't. um, Besides hammer time, you can always go through other options. And I just think it's important to design for your needs, right? Like for my car, I'm trying to get a quiet first gen that makes 700 horsepower. Because now the G42 1450 doesn't fit. It's going off to a friend's build. She's doing something incredibly cool, which I'm a part of and I've helped design. And we're doing this exact step of stopping and designing for her needs for her car. And it really pays off to see overall functionality of the vehicle to the client. A prime example, I'm not going to say who, but it's a very nicely tuned car with a very shitty intercooler. And on his previously tuned setup by someone else, air temps were getting into 158 degrees air temp, and he's running 15 pounds of boost. Now, if you don't understand that on a factory twin FDRW, you are right there at the peak, I guess, safety factor of gasoline, because air temp is incredibly important. The chances of detonation at that temperature are dangerous. If you were to have that same car at 70 degrees air temp all the time, he could run 17, 18, 19, 20 pounds of boost and be safe. And so when I come to design certain things, ducting is a huge contributing factor. Intercooler sizing is a huge contributing factor. The way that you have air inlets going into the turbo, if it's behind a radiator, or even worse, if it's unfiltered and behind a radiator, it's useless. You see these people all the time online. They're like, oh, I want to show off my turbo. I want to leave it open. And it doesn't matter if it made more power in the dyno. The second you go drive that thing on the road, what's on the road? Rocks, debris, fucking pigeons and shit, pedestrians. They all get sucked into your turbo, which all gets pumped into your motor and blows shit up. Why? Why sacrifice your whole build for what, a 2% power change? And that's if your filter is incorrectly sized. If you use something like I did the air mass calculation for a filter. And Canon has all this stuff published. If you ever need to look it up, they'll say this filter can flow this much CFM, so on and so forth. So guess what? When you plot a turbo map, like what I do for services, if anyone needs that, let me know, because I do that all the time. I will plot a compressor map based on your usages. And I'll say, well, fuck, we need 75 pounds of air per minute. So that means an air filter that handles 75 pounds of air per minute, right? Very simple. And you can look it up by getting air density, air temp, and having the very simplistic approach of saying, I need a filter this big. Wow, now it's not a reduction. So it'll make the same power with the filter as it didn't without it. So I might as well get cold air and filtered air instead of blasting my motor with frickin' rocks and bullshit. And this comes back down to the design. If your design does not allow this, you fucked up. You need to go add something back in or take something out to where you can fit everything together for its functionality to be optimal. And that's not in a one and done situation. So unless you're drag racing in a start, stop, very short region, you're going to have things like air temp to factor into account. You have things like rocks and debris for your turbo to factor into account. And it's an important thing to say, I need to have these features for my car. AC condenser, power steering cooler, shit like that, just to stack and fit and make it all cohesive. So I don't know where to end this video off, but I'm just really sad seeing the design work of some people, and I think we can do better. I really do. So if anyone does need help with this sort of stuff, this was the #1 principle of starting right brain design. So now that I'm slowly backing away from certain things and I'm very efficient with my time now, we can do this sort of design stuff. And no, it's not going to be cheap. I'm not cheap. And I don't ever intend to be cheap. But it will be done correctly. And it will be to the point of have your fabricator land this here, have your fabricator land this here. Here's your reference points. Run this to this to this to this. And things will end up laying out with fluidity. It'll be simple. You'll see, I don't think I'll add them to this video, but on my Instagram, you'll see photos of what's happened with the fabrication for my personal engine bay. It came together exactly as we intended it to, or exactly as I intended it to, and then we talked it out, and Phil was able to take what I had in mind and bring it to life. Very simple changes here and there, but the artistic ability was there. The design was there. So, made it work. Anyways, make it better. Not Build Back Better, because that guy's an idiot. But yeah, let's see some good engine bays from now on. Please, guys. I'm really getting tired of it. Plan for your shit. All right? Get to the next one. Peace.